Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm super excited because I'm sharing with you all my October TBR. So if you are new to booktube, if you're new to reading, you may not be aware of what TBR is. TBR means to be read. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you my list of books that I want to read that I have not read. Actually, some of these books I've started and have not finished. So it's gonna be partial, like books that I want to read in October, as well as books that I've started and have not finished. And apart from that, I'm going to be sharing with you guys my book recommendations for the fall. So really nice, cozy reads. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I want to preface this by sharing with you all why I chose these specific books. So I chose these books because I feel like October, I mean, it's spooky season. Like this is the time, you know, that people are putting up their decorations for Halloween and they're carving pumpkins, and it's just like really cozy vibes. Like I just think of like brown and like orange leaves and just like, I don't know, I just think of comfort. I think of like candles. This is one of my favorite times of year. Anyway, so I chose books that aren't necessarily like scary, but kind of go along with that cozy fall feeling. So y'all may not agree with some of the books on this list, and some of them you may be able to see why I chose these, but anyway. So for my very first book, I have The Secret History. This is by Donna Tartt. I've heard wonderful things about this book. Everybody raves about this book, at least on Goodreads and what I've heard from people who've read it. I'm gonna give you a brief synopsis. Under the influence of a charismatic classics professor, a group of clever, eccentric misfits at a New England college discover a way of thought and life a world away from their banal contemporaries. I hope I said that right. But their search for the transcendent leads them down a dangerous path beyond human constructs of morality. So I've started this book, I have not finished it, but basically the way that it starts off, like this is literally like on the first page, so I'm not spoiling anything, but the way that this starts off is it's a group of college students. They're all underneath this very specific professor. I believe, if I remember, he's either like, I think he's like a Latin professor. He specializes in Latin. And all of these students have a curriculum that is separate from the rest of the university. So these students are handpicked by this professor. It's a very tight-knit group. It's very selective. And so the main character in this book basically gets picked to join this group of students. And in the beginning of the book, we see how one of the students is murdered by his fellow classmates. And so basically it goes back in time to when these students first met and how they got to where they were in the beginning. So like why they chose to murder the student. Honestly, like I really like the writing. This is definitely like dark academia vibes, and that's why I chose it for October. But yeah, honestly, I'm really excited to read this because it was good. It was good, a little slow, but I think it's purposeful. I think it's like one of those books where it has like a lot of details, a lot of little things that are gonna be pieced together at the end. So super excited for this one. All right, moving on to our next book, we have Ninth House. This is another dark academia type book. Honestly, I don't remember much about this. It says Galaxy, or Alex Stern, is the most unlikely member of Yale's freshman class. Raised in the Los Angeles hinterlands by a hippie mom, Alex dropped out of school early and into a world of shady drug dealer boyfriends, dead-end jobs, and much, much worse. In fact, by age 20, she is the sole survivor of a horrific, unsolved multiple homicide. Some might say she's thrown her life away, but at her hospital bedside, Alex is offered a second chance to attend one of the world's most prestigious universities on a full ride. What's the catch, and why her? Still searching for answers, Alex arrives in New Haven, tasked by her mysterious benefactors with monitoring the activities of Yale's secret societies. Their 8 windowless tombs are the well-known haunts of the rich and powerful, from high-ranking politicos to Wall Street's biggest players. But their occult activities are more sinister and more extraordinary than any paranoid imagination might conceive. They tamper with forbidden magic, they raise the dead, and sometimes they prey on the living. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, as I read the synopsis of this, I low-key got goosebumps. So this is another book that I've started and have not finished. Let's see, where did I got to like page 74, 75. So I didn't get like super far into it. I think this is a series. I think it has like 2 books in the series. Correct me if I'm wrong if you know anything about this book, but this is a fantasy novel. I'm typically not like I've previously have not been huge on fantasy. Like, I don't know, for whatever reason, just hasn't been for me. But lately, I am. So I'm actually really excited to reread this because I feel like now that my taste has evolved, I may enjoy this more. When I first started reading this is when I was back like getting into reading. So when I was younger, I used to be like a huge bookworm. I literally could not go anywhere without a book. Like if you saw me, there was a book in my hand. And like as an adult, like growing up and, you know, I've just been busy with other things and I've lost my love for reading. So on that quest, I've been specifically challenging myself to read outside, like books that are outside of my comfort zone. So I've gotten into fantasy. I think the book that started for me was A Touch of Darkness, which is actually, I think, on my list of books that I'm recommending, but that's neither here nor there. I'm excited to read this. I really love, I kind of, like my guilty pleasure is like culty, like, I don't want to say the occult, but I'm like really interested in like the Illuminati, conspiracy, things like that. Like when it comes to like people, like really wealthy people, like are they a part of cults? Like is this like a thing that they actually do? Like are they actually out here sacrificing people? I'm just interested in that. I don't know. So I'm excited to read this because it's kind of like diving into that. Not like, obviously this is fictional, but whatever. On to the next book. We have Vicious. Once again, another book that I've started and have not finished. In my defense, when I started this book, I was actually really excited to read it, but I had just ordered Stephen King's The Institute, and I've never read at that point, I'd like never read a Stephen King novel, and I was really excited to read his writing. So I ended up putting this one down to read that. So that's why this one didn't get finished. But what I read so far has been good. On to the synopsis. Victor and Eli started out as college roommates, brilliant, arrogant, lonely boys who recognized the same sharpness and ambition in each other. In their senior year, a shared research interest in adrenaline, near-death experiences, and seemingly supernatural events reveals an intriguing possibility that under the right conditions, someone could develop extraordinary abilities. But when their thesis moves from the academic to the experimental, things go horribly wrong. This is also a series. I think there's 2 books in the series. Pretty self-explanatory. I'm excited to read it. I feel like this whole thing is like fantasy low-key. Next book. This is another book by V.E. Schwab. I forgot to say that Vicious is also by V.E. Schwab. This is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but another book that I've started and have not finished. This is another fantasy novel, I believe. This is a very popular book. Like, I'm sure you've heard of this book before if you haven't read it. I haven't finished reading it. I feel like I have so many books to catch up on that are like popular and like everybody like raves about. But onto the synopsis if you have not heard of this book before. France, 1714. In a moment of desperation, a young woman named Adeline meets a dangerous stranger and makes a terrible mistake. As she realizes the limitations of her Faustian bargain, being able to live forever without being able to be remembered by anyone she sees, Addie chooses to flee her small village as everything she once held dear is torn away. But there are still dreams to be had and a life to live, and she is determined to find excitement and satisfaction in the wide, beckoning world, even if she will be doomed to be alone forever. Or not quite alone, as every year on her birthday, the alluring, I think it's pronounced Luke, comes to visit, checking to see if she is ready to give up her soul. Their darkly thrilling game stretches through the ages, seeing Addie witness history and fight to regain herself as she crosses oceans and tries on various lives. It will be 300 years before she stumbles into a hidden bookstore and discovers someone who can remember her name, and suddenly everything changes again. Not gonna lie, I read this and I got goosebumps too. I'm really excited to read these books. Like, I'm not gonna lie, a couple of days ago I was thinking about it. I'm like, dang, like I started all these books and I didn't finish them. Like, I don't wanna read them. Like, they seem like they're gonna be boring. I don't feel that way anymore. I think I just need to be reminded of what they're about. So once again, I'm excited about this one. Next book. This is A Court of Mist and Fury. I started the ACOTAR series. I loved A Court of Thorns and Roses. I read it and I was like, next book immediately. I think I bought the next book. I think I bought this like the next day after I finished it. Obsessed. I've started this and have not finished it. What's new? I actually tried to read this like on an audiobook because this book is so freaking large. So I thought like while I'm out, you know, running errands, living my life, I could listen to the audio version of it. I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of hard. Like sometimes I lose focus so easily. So it'll be on in the background and the next thing you know, I'm thinking about something else. And then I tune back into the audio and I'm like, oh shoot, what happened? And I have to rewind it, and it's been a mess. But we're gonna try our hand at this one again. I'm not gonna lie, this one bored me a bit. I was really in love with the first book. Like the first book just like my heart, you know, because I just loved the romance. But I think this also has romance in it too. I feel like I think it's a new love interest. I don't know. I know nothing about the series. Yeah, this one just seemed kind of slow because this one was more focused on like world building. It was more focused on like politics, and I just like, it lost me. So we're gonna, this is very ambitious because this book is freaking massive, but this is on our list. I would really like to finish the series. I will finish the series, but I don't know. I feel like this might be the last book that I read this month, because I feel like if this is good and I'm obsessed with it, like how everybody else has been obsessed with it, then I'm gonna want to continue the rest of the series immediately after. But yeah. Here's a book that I'm really excited about. Like, if this isn't going to be the first book that I read in October, then this is going to be the second. But this is Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. This is part 2 of the Red Rising series. I read Red Rising, I think, in my last book vlog and was obsessed. I think in that video I was reading Haley Pham's 5-star reads. Obsessed with it. Like, I didn't even finish the book and it was already 5 stars. So this is number 2. I think it's a trilogy and I'm really excited to read this. I have to know what happens. Like, I love Pierce Brown's writing. Like, so far, like his writing has yet to fail to surprise me. Like, anyway, I'm excited to read it, and I definitely recommend that you read this series if you have not read it already. This is even though this is considered sci-fi, it still kind of gives like fall vibes to me, because it also kind of gives like fantasy vibes to me. Who am I kidding? The only reason that this is going in the October TBR has nothing to do with October, has nothing to do with fall vibes. I'm just really excited to read it because I'm obsessed and I want to finish the series. Sue me. All right, so now we're gonna move on to the books that I don't have with me physically. Number 1 being, okay, so please ignore my dog in the background, he's eating. But the next book is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. Okay, so I have lately been on like a Sarah Caroli like video binge. Like, I think I've watched like all of her videos at this point. And so I heard from her Once Upon a Broken Heart and like how much she loves this series. I think it's like 2 in the series. And I was like, I have to read this. I have to read this. It sounds like exactly it sounds like everything that I love. Anyway, I'm gonna read y'all the synopsis so you can understand where I'm coming from. This is a fantasy, by the way. How far would you go for happily ever after? For as long as she can remember, Evangeline Fox has believed in true love and happy endings until she learns that the love of her life will marry another. Oh, desperate to stop the wedding and to heal her wounded heart, Evangeline strikes a deal with the charismatic but wicked Prince of Hearts. In exchange for his help, he asks for 3 kisses to be given at the time and place of his choosing. But after Evangeline's first promised kiss, she learns that bargaining with an immortal is a dangerous game and that the Prince of Hearts wants far more from her than she's pledged. He has plans for Evangeline, plans that will either end in the greatest happily ever after or the most exquisite tragedy. Y'all, doesn't that sound freaking incredible? If you are a hopeless romantic like me and you love a like enemies to lovers trope, y'all, like, you cannot tell me that does not sound like the best book you're ever gonna possibly read. I ordered it yesterday off Amazon, so that's supposed to be arriving today. That is the book that I want to read first. Like, I'm literally waiting for it to get here so I can start it, because I can't think about anything else. I've been wanting this book ever since I started Haley Pham's 5-star reads, because that was on her list of 5 stars. And I was like, oh, this would be perfect. But then when I went to Barnes and Noble, they didn't have it. So anyway, but it's coming today and I'm really excited to read that. That's literally gonna be the first book that I read. Next book. So the next book on the list that I don't physically have right now is Midnight Star. So that's gonna be book number 3 in the Red Rising series. Self-explanatory. I don't think I need to say anything else about it. And that's it. So moving on to my book recommendations now. Okay, now we're gonna talk about my book recommendations for you for the fall. Number 1, Alone with You in the Ether. This is very much cozy romance, fall vibes. I don't know. When I think of this book, like I read this technically in the winter, but when I think of this book, it definitely gives me like fall feelings. Like for whatever reason, when I think about New York, I think of the fall, and that's where this is placed. Like that's the location of this book is New York. So I don't know, like every time I think of New York, I just think of fall. So that's why I recommend this for the fall. So if you want like a cute little, like, well, I won't call it cute, but if you want a fall romance, that's gonna definitely give you the feels. This one is this one for me. Here's the synopsis. Two people meet in the Art Institute by chance. Prior to their encounter, he is a doctoral student who manages his destructive thoughts with compulsive calculations about time travel. She is a bipolar counterfeit artist, undergoing court-ordered psychotherapy. By the end of the story, these things will still be true, but this is not a story about endings. For Reagan, people are predictable and tedious, including and perhaps especially herself. She copes with the dreariness of existence by living impulsively, imagining a new, alternate timeline being created in the wake of every rash decision. To Aldo, the world feels disturbingly chaotic. He gets through his days by erecting a wall of routine, a backbeat of rules and formulas that keep him going. Without them, the entire framework of his existence would collapse. For Reagan and Aldo, life has a matter of resigning themselves to the blueprints of inevitability until the two meet. Could 6 conversations with a stranger be the variable that shakes up the entire simulation? So basically, if I read this freaking months ago, and my memory is atrocious, but basically, if I remember this correctly, honestly, low-key, it may not even be set in New York. It might be set in Chicago. But I do think it's New York. I'm not selling this book. Anyway, this book is basically about like these two people that are like so opposite of each other, and they meet and they like just have this instant connection. Like for whatever reason, like they're just so interested in one another, like because I think of their differences. And so they decide to have like six conversations. And in the course of 6 conversations, they end up falling in love, and like you get to see how their relationship progresses and how beautiful love can be even when it's not perfect. If you're looking for another like fall romance, this is more true to being like a fall romance in my opinion, because it's fantasy. When I think of fantasy, I just think of the fall. But this is A Touch of Darkness. I spoke about this a little bit earlier. This is on the steamier side. I didn't know that when I bought this. So when I started reading it, I was like, oh. Persephone is the goddess of spring in title only. Since she was a little girl, flowers have only shriveled at her touch. After moving to New Athens, she hoped to lead an unassuming life disguised as a mortal journalist. All of that changes when she sits down in a forbidden nightclub to play a hand of cards with a hypnotic and mysterious stranger. Hades, god of the dead, has built a gambling empire in the mortal world, and his favorite bets are rumored to be impossible. But nothing has ever intrigued him as much as the goddess offering him a bargain he can't resist. After her encounter with Hades, Persephone finds herself in a contract with the god of the dead, and his terms are impossible. Persephone must create life in the underworld or lose her freedom forever. The bet does more than expose Persephone's failure as a goddess, however. As she struggles to sow the seeds of her freedom, love for the god of the dead grows, a love that is both captivating and forbidden. It's good. That's all I gotta say about it. The romance was 10 out of 10. This is a series. I think it's 3 parts. I have all 3 parts. I have not finished the series, but the first book is really good. I recommend it. Next, I have a nice little thriller for you. This is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I've spoken to you about this before. We've talked about this. Y'all know about this, but I'll read the synopsis again in case you forgot. Every day I clean the Winchester's beautiful house top to bottom. I pick up their daughter from school and I cook a delicious meal for the whole family before heading out to eat alone in my tiny room on the top floor. I try to ignore how Nina makes a mess just to watch me clean it up, and how she tells strange lies about her own daughter, and how her husband, Andrew, seems more broken every day. But as I look into Andrew's handsome brown eyes, so full of pain, it's hard not to imagine what it would be like to live Nina's life. The walk-in closet, the fancy car, the perfect husband. I try on one of Nina's pristine white dresses once, just to see what it's like, but she soon finds out, and by the time I realize my attic bedroom only locks from the outside, it's far too late. But I reassure myself, the Winchesters don't know who I really am. They don't know what I'm capable of. This was good. It definitely shocked me. There's a plot twist in here, and when I read it, and I was like, there's no way. Like, it's good. This is a good, fast-paced thriller. I definitely recommend. I think there is a part 2 to this. I have not read it. It's on my list of my TBR list, but just not for October. Okay, next is A Court of Thorns and Roses. This is the first book in the series. So this comes before this. This is the one that I was saying I just loved the romance. I just ate this right up. I don't think I've met anybody who's read this and hasn't liked it. So if you've yet to read this, if you're interested in trying out fantasy, I think this is a very good place to start. I'll give you guys a synopsis. When 19-year-old huntress Feyre kills a wolf in the woods, a terrifying creature arrives to demand retribution. Dragged to a treacherous magical land she knows about only from legends, Feyre discovers that her captor is not truly a beast, but one of the lethal, immortal fairies who once ruled her world. At least he's not a beast all the time. As she adapts to her new home, her feelings for the fairy Tamlin transforms from icy hostility into a fiery passion that burns through every lie she's been told about the beautiful, dangerous world of the Fae. But something is not right in the fairylands. An ancient wicked shadow is growing, and Feyre must find a way to stop it or doom Tamlin and his world forever. Really good. Not only was the romance good, but I even found myself interested in like the actual plot of the book that was like separate from the romance. It's good, and I'm really excited to finish reading this series. I definitely recommend that you guys read it as well. I think you'll really enjoy it. I'm not sure if I spoke about this one yet, but here is Pierce Brown, Red Rising. This is the book before this one. The best book of all time, 5-star read, would read it again. It's so good. 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 Just read it. Synopsis time. His wife taken, his people enslaved, driven by a longing for justice and the memory of lost love, Darrow will stop at nothing to bring down his enemies, even if he must become one of them to do so. So basically, it's about a guy who is, how do I explain this? So Red Rising, it's a sci-fi. It's based on the planet of Mars. So basically, Earth has transferred its people from Earth to Mars, and they're creating a society on Mars. But what Darrow, the main character, doesn't know is, so basically Darrow is taught, he's like a mine worker. And so he's basically taught from birth on that his purpose is he has to create something that's supposed to make the atmosphere inhabitable for humans to live on Mars. And so he's working like dangerous work with the idea that all of this is going to be worth it, because he is basically ensuring that Mars is hospitable for the people that are going to be coming from Earth, only to find out that Mars has been inhabited for years, you know, and that basically he's just a slave to the society, and that there's hierarchies in the society based on color. And so he's red, and that's the very bottom of the hierarchy. So like very bottom, like you can't get lower than that. And so basically some things happen that cause him to go on a quest to dismantle this hierarchy. And it is so good. Everybody relates it to the Hunger Games and how like that kind of dystopian world. And it's very similar, although this is much better in my opinion. Like it's in a league of its own. So I definitely recommend it if you're interested in something like that. If you're interested in trying sci-fi, if you're interested in dystopian type societies, this is the one for you. All right, last but not least, definitely not least, I have Storm and Silence by Robert Thier. I think it's pronounced Thier. I don't know how to pronounce it. This is a series of like 5 or 6 or 7 books, a lot of books. This is an adventure romance. I'm typically like not like an adventure reading kind of gal, but like this book is so good. Like the series is good. Like I just really love the dynamic between the main character and the main love interest. Like their dynamic is so cute. Let me read you the synopsis and then I can explain like why I love this series so much. Freedom, that is what Lily Linton wants most in life. Not marriage, not a brood of squalling brats, and certainly not love, thank you very much. But freedom is a rare commodity in 19th century London, where girls are expected to spend their lives sitting at home, fully occupied with looking pretty. Lily is at her wit's end until a chance encounter with a dark, dangerous, and powerful stranger changes her life forever. Enter the world of Mr. Rickard Ambrose, where the only rule is knowledge is power, is time, is money. Y'all, I love this book. So basically how this book starts off, Lily, the main character, she is a feminist. She is like one of the very early feminists. Like she is pro women's rights. She thinks women should be equal. She is not interested in marriage because she's like, I do not want to be submissive to a man. Like I do not want a man to be telling me what I should be doing with my life. Like I want to make my own money. I want to do my own thing. I want to live my own life. I am not trying to be under a man. And I respect Lily. I respect Lily for that. But the way the book starts off is Lily is dressed up as a man because she is going to the polls to go vote, which, as you know, during 19th century London, like women can't vote. So she's in a sense rebelling against that. And in the course of doing so, she ends up running into Mr. Rickard Ambrose, who's a very wealthy businessman. And he offers her a job under the, you know, not knowing that she's a woman, because when they meet, she's in men's clothing. And so right as she enters the poll to go vote, she ends up getting outed, and so she gets kicked out, and like Mr. Rickard Ambrose sees that she's a woman, but he told her before, you know, knowing that she could come to his office the next day for a job. So she does so. She dresses up in I think she dresses up in her like woman's clothing, and then she arrived, and he was like, absolutely not. He was like, I only offered you that job because I thought you're a man. You're not a man, therefore you don't have a job. And so basically she confronts him. She's very headstrong. She's very opinionated. And she was like, are you not a gentleman? Like, are you not a man of your word? You promised me a job. So basically he says, okay, if you go home and you put on men's clothing, like you can come back and like you can work for me. And so the whole series is about her acting as his like personal assistant, and they go on these adventures to all different parts of the world, and they're building their love over time. So like she's very stubborn, like he's very like stiff, very type A, very things have to be a certain way, you know, I'm the authority, like you do as I say, like he's like that. And she's very much like questions authority. She very much is, you know, challenging authority. Like she's very much like, hey, why do I have to do that? She's like, their dynamic is amazing. She like frustrates him beyond belief, but like the love that they share is so cute. Like when I tell you that this is a slow burn, it's a slow burn. I think I'm on book like number 4 or number 5. I haven't finished the series. I'm on book like number 4, and they still aren't together. Like, you know that they have feelings for each other, but they still aren't together. So if you're looking for something where you can really watch like the love and affection grow between the two love interests, then like this is the series for you. Personally, I love romance like that. Like I want to know every single detail. Like I want every single scene of them together. That's what I like. So I love the series for that, because I get so much of them. Like, you know, the thing that I hate about like standalone romances is because like that's all that you get from those characters. Unless it's, you know, a series, you know, or maybe they're talked about briefly in other books, like you don't really get, I don't know, like I just want as much as I possibly can, like when I love characters and I love their dynamic together. So this definitely gives that, and that's why I recommend it. It's not only fun to read, it's funny, but it's just really good. So this first book is really thick. The other ones aren't as big, but they definitely are worth reading. This book in particular ends off on a cliffhanger. I didn't know that going into it. And so this is my final recommendation, probably my most recommended book. I love it. All right, y'all. Well, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate you all. I hope that you have found multiple books to read if you have not read any of these books. I hope these recommendations have been very helpful for you if you're looking for something new to try. But yeah, comment down below if you've read any of these. Comment down below if you're interested in reading any of these. Comment down below any other recommendations you have for me. I'm always open to reading something new. But yep, that is it for this one. I will catch you all in the next video. Bye.